This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
Forgiveness is to forgive the situation that you had no control over.
Hey everybody, welcome to Crime Over Cocktails. I'm Tiffany, your host, and today I'm here with my guest, Jane. But welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for, giving me the platform to share my story with everybody.
Absolutely. It's a very inspiring story.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a victim of a violent crime. Back in 1988, I went to a fair. I was 7 months pregnant, 22 years old, and I was coming home, and it was so hot that summer. It was August 6th, 1988. Very hot, humid summer. So I decided to stop at a store, which was closed, but it had soda vending machines outside. Now, this is a community that is very small in New Hampshire, Swansea, New Hampshire. Back in 1988, virtually no major crime. And so I didn't see any reason, or really never really crossed my mind that, I shouldn't stop at that store. It was just, I stopped and got out of my car. I got a soda out of the soda machine, got back in my car, and very, very, like within a minute, I noticed a vehicle pull up beside my car, and I didn't really pay much attention to it. Like I said, small community, virtually no major crime, felt safe. I was 22, so, that was also a contributor. So I sat there for a couple of seconds drinking my soda, and I was going to get ready to start my car and back up. And I noticed that in my rearview mirror that person that pulled up beside me out of his vehicle and walked behind my car and came up to my car door. And he said, "Is the payphone working?" Well, as he was saying that, he had opened my car door before I could even respond, and tried to grab me and take me out of the car. And I just started screaming. I was kicking him. I was doing everything I could to get him out of my car so I could take off. He eventually took a knife out and said, "Well, maybe this will persuade you to get out of your car," which it did. I got out of my car. At this point, I was kind of confused, like, who is this guy? What does he want? I was very adamant I was not going to go with him. And then he said something odd. He was like, "Well, you beat up my girlfriend." And I was like, "No, I didn't beat up anybody's girlfriend." And then he was like, "Well, isn't this a Massachusetts car?" And I said, "No." So he started, well, to back it up a little bit, while we were struggling in my car, I happened to kick my windshield and shattered my windshield because I was trying to kick him out of my car. So as we're outside, he mentioned the license plate thing. And I was like, "No, I'm not from Massachusetts. These are New Hampshire plates." So he walked to the back of my car, like he was looking at my plates. By this time, I'm really confused. Okay, what exactly does this guy want?
Right.
And the next thing I know, he's walking back to his vehicle. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay. So he pulls me out of the car, confuses me with somebody else. I have a smashed windshield, and he's walking back to his car like he was going to leave. And I said these words I'll regret for the rest of my life. I said, "Hey, asshole, what about my windshield?" And he turned around and came back to me, put a knife up against my neck, and we're standing there. And like a few seconds later, I see a vehicle coming down the road. Now, this is at night. This was like 11 o'clock at night. I see headlights and I see a vehicle coming down the road. Now, I'm on a main road, Route 10 in Swansea. And I was thinking in my mind, okay, the only way I'm getting out of this situation is I have to run to that road and scream and try to get their attention. So I did. I dashed for the road. And they just drove by. I screamed, hollered, jumped, waved, and they just drove by. And the next thing I know, as I'm running towards the road, he tackled me down like a football player. And then he got on top of me and he proceeded to stab me. He ultimately stabbed me 27 times. I have a lot of defensive wounds because I was trying to protect my baby. I was 7 months pregnant. And
Right.
it felt like forever that he was stabbing me. But yet it was like, it was just a matter of 30 seconds maybe. And he got up and he walked away. And I'm laying on the ground. I could feel the blood coming out of me. He stabbed me 27 times. I had 2 collapsed lungs. He lacerated my liver. He cut a tendon in my thumb and a tendon in my knee. He cut my jugular and my neck. So I was like, I heard him walk away. And as I was laying there, I could just feel the blood coming out of me. But I knew I had to go get help. So I somehow rolled over on my hands and knees and I started getting up. And he drove right by me, right by my head. And I looked right up at him and he looked right down at me and he drove away. So I stumbled, finally got up, got to my car, got in my car, and I started heading down the road, trying to find help. And
With a broken windshield.
with a shattered windshield, yes. Next thing I know, I had driven maybe not even a mile, and I was right behind him. And I said, oh my gosh. All right. I also had a friend that lived 2 miles down the road, so I was planning on going to his house. I was like, he's going to see where I'm going. But at that time, I didn't care. I needed help. So I ended up pulling into my friend's driveway and stumbled to his stairs, and his front door was open. His screen door was shut. And he came to the screen door, and I said, some asshole just stabbed the shit out of me and collapsed on his steps. And after that, I really don't remember too much. Rescue came, and I survived, and my baby survived. I ended up carrying her for another 2 months, which was miraculous. But I believe that I would never have survived if I was not pregnant. I truly believe she saved my life because she had such a will to survive, that gave me the strength to survive. And
Right.
very shortly after that, while I was in the hospital, I found out that I was also a victim. Or they believed at the time, they were piecing it together, that I have maybe been the victim of the Connecticut River Valley serial killer, he was a serial killer that was going up and down the Connecticut River Valley, which borders New Hampshire and Vermont. And he was killing women. There was seven or eight other women that were murdered. And then I quickly found out that I was the only survivor. So that was kind of, that was a shocker. It took me some time to process that. And unfortunately, to this day, my case and the other cases are unsolved. The
Were you
Connecticut.
able to give them like a depot, like what he looked like? Were you
Yeah.
able to sketch anything?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because while I was in the hospital, I was in there for quite some time. I was on a ventilator because my 2 collapsed lungs. I was on a ventilator, so I couldn't speak. But the detectives really needed some information from me. And afterwards I thought about it as like they came into the ICU room and they had this box of different slides of like eyes and mouth and noses and facial features and all that stuff. And so they were showing me slides and I had to like blink once for yes and blink 2 for no. And so they actually put a composite together with these boxes of slides. Yeah, afterwards I thought about it and it's like, why did they do that so quick? You know, and then I thought, oh, they weren't sure I was going to survive. So they had to try to get as much information from me as possible. I did give them information of the description of the vehicle to the first officer that arrived on the scene where I was before rescue got there, because the police showed up before rescue. So I gave as much information as I could then. So yeah, I did the composite in the hospital, and for days or weeks or months, they generated that throughout the whole community and on the news and all that. So my family protected me a lot while I was in the hospital. I was all over the news. I was on CNN and my story was being aired on WMUR, the local news in New Hampshire, and all the newspapers, just everywhere. And see, back then, they put the victims' names in the news. And they don't do that anymore, thank God. But back then, they put the victim's name in the news. And when I started seeing all the news clippings and all this stuff, it was like, and then read in the paper that I was possibly a victim of the Connecticut River Valley serial killer and that the others hadn't survived. I was like, oh my God, he knows where I am. He knows my name. I am not safe. And so I lived with a lot of fear for a long time. While I was in the hospital, I had a police officer outside my door at all times. So they had to come in and ask me, if I knew a certain person that wanted to come in the room or whatever. But when I went home, I was like, so is this guy coming home with me? Am I going to have security
Right.
at home? And no, it doesn't work that way. But they had the local police do, regular drive-bys by my house. I was never alone for a long time. And for a long time, I lived in fear.
I can only imagine. He's
Yeah,
still out there.
yeah, exactly. And, not to, jump forward or anything, but my case and all the other cases still remain unsolved. They still haven't identified who it was, anything like that. They're still unsolved. There's no suspect. Cases have gone cold over the years, unfortunately. I was becoming a mom, and I had my daughter, and I had to bring some kind of normalcy back into my life. And so as time gradually went, I started living what I thought was a normal life. Mental health was not spoke about as much 35 years ago as it is today. After my attack, I quickly went into like a mental survival mode because physically I fully healed. Physically, I healed fairly quickly too. Mentally, not so much. And for 20 years, I had no counseling. I was just trying to live what I thought was a normal life. And then I made really bad choices in my life. I ultimately stole from an organization I was a part of for 25 years that I love so much. And I ended up going to jail, and I ended up becoming a felon. But I took full responsibility for my bad choices. But that time in my life, that was both probably the worst time of my life, but also a blessing in disguise. I was a really bad compulsive gambler, which contributed to me making a lot of these bad choices. When I went to court, the court ordered me to get counseling for my gambling, for my compulsive gambling. So I started doing counseling for that. My counselor was wonderful. She really was. And, I don't know, I was going to counseling for about 2 months when I finally brought up my attack. She was like, "Oh my God, Jane. Hello, we got to go down a different road now here." She's like,
Right.
"I want to clinically diagnose you with PTSD." And I was like, "No, PTSD are, that's servicemen and women that served overseas and saw and experienced, unspeakable things." And so she went over the computer and she printed me out a paper with most of the symptoms of PTSD. And she's like, "You bring that home, you look at that, and then we'll talk next week." So I was like, all right. Just kind of blew it off, It's like, you know, okay, so I have PTSD, whatever, I didn't know what PTSD really was. And a couple of days later, I went in my pocketbook and I took out the paper and I read it. And I sat there and I was like reading all these symptoms. And I'm like, holy crap, I
That
have
was like an aha
PTSD.
moment.
It was a
Yeah.
huge aha moment. I was like, oh my God, I have PTSD. So I went in that following week and to my counselor and sat on the couch and I said, okay, I have PTSD. Now what? Like, now what can we do about this? And she said, now we heal you. And I was like, what? So we began the healing process. One of the things I really had a hard time with, I was always one to own up to my own mistakes, own up to my own bad choices. I never wanted to ever use my attack as an excuse for my bad choices. But she, made me understand that my attack was a direct result of my addiction, which was a direct result of the bad choices that I did make. And when we started my healing process, I mean, it took me 7 years to really, really go through the process of my healing. I completely stripped myself naked, completely stripped myself naked of everything. And I had to individually address every single symptom I had of PTSD. And, that turned me into such a different person than I was for the 20 years after my attack. I finally became the person I always wanted to be. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I was, for 20 years, I was not living a very normal life whatsoever. My life was anything but normal, but I didn't realize that. I did not realize that. I was living in a survival mode. My way of thinking, my way of the things that I did, the things that I said, the way that I felt about a lot of things was not normal. But after, receiving all the healing and the counseling and healing myself, today I living a happy, normal life. There was a lot of stuff that I had to go through. For an example, people don't realize what victims really go through after they've gone through something really traumatic. It's like you don't just experience this trauma and just get over it.
Mm-mm.
It
And
rewires
move
your
on.
brain.
Oh, absolutely. You just don't get over it and move on. That's not as much as I wish I could have. I couldn't. You don't. That's not how it works. Back in it was like a couple of years after my attack, right after I had been on Unsolved Mysteries, with all the cases, with the Connecticut River Valley cases, and this was before social media and Facebook and emails and all that. I received hate mail.
What?
People literally took time out of their lives to write me these horrible letters.
Because
And
you survived?
with Unsolved Mysteries, I was playing the victim card. And that I should have taken responsibility for my bad choices with like stopping at that store at night to get a soda and putting my unborn child in danger. I had another letter saying that I should be reported to Child Protection Services and that I shouldn't even be a mom or have my child because I put my unborn child in danger.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah. But when I got these letters, I was already going through survivor's guilt. You know, so these letters I didn't tell anybody about for years. It was as if they were confirming everything I was feeling at that time. Well, maybe I am playing the victim card. Maybe I should have stopped at that store. Maybe I was neglectful and not thinking about my unborn child at the time. I it was almost like it confirmed everything for me. So when I was doing counseling, a counselor had made a comment one day. She's like, "You blame yourself in a certain way for your attack. Why? I don't understand that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about survivor's guilt." And I said, "Well, I got letters." And she's like, "Letters?" And I brought the letters in and she read them. And she was like, "These people just have no clue what you've gone through. They've obviously not walked in your shoes." And she said, "Let's burn these. Let's burn these. Get rid of them." That was probably one of the most freeing things I ever done because it took so much. I felt so responsible for so many things that night. And when I burned those letters, it was a way for me to say, okay, let it go. You weren't responsible. You didn't ask to be attacked. You didn't ask for this monster to insert himself into your life. You didn't ask to be, stabbed 27 times. So it was probably one of the best moments of my counseling was, doing that, burning those letters,
Good.
and letting these people know, what right do you have to judge me? Judge yourself
Right?
first. I don't need you to judge me. I don't. You don't have no right to judge me. And I'll say, maybe one of the listeners that wrote the letter, maybe one of them are one of your listeners that wrote those letters. So I will gladly say to you, if you wrote me those letters, they don't mean anything to me anymore. Stop judging people. How dare you judge me when you weren't even there that night? And so there's my message to you.
My message is shame on you. And if that's the way you want to carry on, you can stop listening to my show because that's bullshit.
Yeah. But, these are some of the things that victims go through and people don't know. I went through a lot of depression and anger. And, another thing I had to do is I had to accept that I was attacked, fully accept it, and accept the fact that I had no control over it. Another thing I had to do was forgive.
Mhm.
That was so hard for me. It was like, for so many years, as so many people say, you got to forgive. I'm like, forgive who? How
Yourself, for one.
possibly forgive him? I can't forgive him. For one, I don't even know who the hell he is. For two, I don't think he's ever going to apologize or ever show any remorse for what he did. So who the hell do I forgive? And I kind of put that on the back burner for a few years, the whole forgiveness thing. And then good old Oprah Winfrey was on one day. And it was ironic because I didn't usually watch her back then because I worked. And I happened to be home that day and I was watching her show and she was talking to these two victims, these sisters that were victims of horrific things. And she started talking about forgiveness. And she said, forgiveness isn't about forgiving them. Forgiveness is forgiving the situation that you had no control over. And that was huge. That was the breaking point. That was like huge. I totally connected to that. I said, oh my God, I can do that. I can completely forgive the situation that I had no control over. And I did that. I went to my counselor and I said, this is what we're going to do now. And I did. I forgave. For one, I did. I forgave myself for blaming myself for so long. And I forgave this situation I had no control over. I was just huge. I was huge. Yeah.
Crazy how little things like that can just make such a huge impact on your life like that. Totally flip the script that you were telling yourself.
Yeah. 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 It's crazy. Yeah. You know, it was like my healing process it was so hard and lengthy. It was 7 years. But today I look back at it and it's so rewarding. My life is so much better today. Is my life perfect? Heck no. But nobody's life is perfect. Everybody has good and bad days. But my good days outweigh my bad days by far now. I still have symptoms of PTSD that pop up, but I have tools to address them now. And that's huge. That is huge. I don't allow my PTSD to take over my life anymore. I own my life. I own my destiny, my future, and I don't allow my PTSD to do that anymore. It's
Good for
been very
you.
rewarding. And my daughter, she is just absolutely amazing. She has always been there through all my good and bad, always encouraging me to be a better person every day, always cheering me on. She's just amazing. She's been through a lot also. She has some neurological issues that she struggles with. But she blessed me with a granddaughter. And she's just the most amazing mom. The most amazing mom. And I sit sometimes and I watch her and my granddaughter together, whether they're reading a book or playing a game or listening to music or whatever. My granddaughter's like wicked into doing YouTube videos, and they'll sit there and edit them together. And I sit there and watch them. It's like, how blessed am I? Had I not survived, or had my daughter not survived, my life would have been so different. And I'm just so blessed to, have both of them in my life today. I'm very grateful. Very grateful to be alive too. Very, very grateful.
Yes, you are blessed, that's for sure.
I am.
Because he probably thought he was leaving you there to die.
Oh yeah. I believe that too. I believe that too. Yeah. But my daughter, we were, during COVID, the big lockdown, stay at home orders or whatever. We started listening to some podcasts, and she punched in Connecticut River Valley cases, and there was a couple of podcasts that were covering that we were listening to, and then she punched in my name, and there was quite a few podcasts that came up with that, and so we're listening to these different podcasts, and she's my daughter is like, "Oh my God, Mom, half the stuff they have on there isn't even correct. Don't they do their research?" And she's like, "That never happened. And why aren't they talking about this? And why are they talking about that?" So she turned around, she looked at me, and she was like, "You need to do a podcast. You need to tell your story." And I was like, I like, my technology with a cell phone is a challenge for me. Never mind do a podcast. And my best friend's son, he's like really intelligent. And I said, "All right, Jess, if I do a podcast, we got to get some technical help here." And she just immediately, she's like, "How about Drew?" And that was my best friend's son. And she's like, "Let's get a hold of him." And ironically, I got a hold of him and his wife, Amanda. And they're like, "Oh my God, we were thinking about starting a podcast too." And so we started collaborating, and we ended up putting together and starting Invisible Tears. And I absolutely love it. It gives me a platform to not only tell my story, but help others. We talk about, PTSD, trauma. At first it was, we were going to, dive more into true crime, which we still do. We talk about true crime on the podcast. But then was like, you know what? I want to help that one person out there that feels the way I did for 20 years after my attack. I want to be able to help that one person. And so as we were doing the podcast and the episodes started coming out, we started getting emails like almost immediately, from women and people telling me, "Oh my God, I've never felt so heard. They're telling me, your story's miraculous, and I've gone through trauma, and because of you, I have never received counseling, and I called a counselor up, and I'm receiving counseling now, and I'm starting my healing process. And we just started getting emails like crazy, and I was like, oh my God, this is why I wanted to do this podcast. This is why I wanted to do Invisible Tears. And I also wanted to do it to give the victims that no longer have a voice. The ones that didn't survive, give them a voice. And so the journey with Invisible Tears has also been, healing for me also, helping with my healing. But to know that I'm also helping others is just a bonus. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling that I'm helping others, because I know what it was like for 20 years. I mean, I hid everything for 20 years after my attack. I hid, all my symptoms of PTSD, or I tried to hide most of them. I hid my gambling. I hid all my bad choices I was making. I was not a good person for 20 years after my attack. So I know that somebody that's so afraid to, receive counseling because of their trauma, or, feels like that they don't have any hope with any kind of healing. Me being able to tell my story and letting people know that, you're not alone. And I know how you feel, and I've been there, and, healing is rewarding, and it does, change your life quite a bit. That's just, I'm grateful that I'm able to do that for others, and
It is
sharing
very,
my story.
yeah. I mean, it is rewarding because it's almost like you get to hit the restart button, like you programmed your mind and your body and everything with all this negativity and anger and hatred and just like stiffness. And once you can actually start working that through, holy shit, you're like, I'm lighter and I'm Lucy and I'm happy.
Yes,
It's so important. That's why I love exactly what I do, because I'm on the same journey, and like, let's all heal together. Let's be
exactly.
better.
Yeah, yes, I
So
agree.
important.
And my relationships with everybody is so much better, with my family and my kids. And I'm a better mother now, and I'm a better wife now, and a better friend. And I'm just, my relationships are so much more healthier. It's nice not to be so angry all the time. I didn't realize how angry and miserable I was to be around. And I was, I was like, some of my friends, they've always been behind me and been there for me. And I'm like, how the heck did you guys tolerate me all those years? But they love me, and you know, now they get to see the best of me.
Exactly. And I'm
Yeah,
sure they know that this, what happened to you, helped shape who you were at that point in time, because it's going to do that. It rewires your brain, it rewires everything.
yeah,
After trauma like that, no one's usually ever the same ever again until you do the work.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you, you got to find yourself again, your new self.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, because like once I was attacked, the person I was before my attack, she was gone. I was
Mhm.
trusting and carefree and spontaneous, and I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't angry. I wasn't depressed. I was a happy 22-year-old getting excited about being a new mom for the first time, and I didn't think about, being scared all the time or paranoid. And, once I was attacked, that person I was before my attack, she was gone. And then I became this new person, this angry person and paranoid person and scared and depressed. And I was that person for 20 years. And then I was able to revert to, the person I am today, a happy person. And, I wake up every day and the first thing I say is, okay, I woke up today, I'm grateful. And then I say, today I'm going to be a better person today than I was yesterday. Doesn't always work. Most of the time I like to think I am a better person today than yesterday. But, that's what I strive for every day. And I also never forget that bad days are temporary. You have a bad day or you have a bad moment. They're so temporary because, I attempted suicide a few times. And I think back and it's just things can change in a split second, in a moment. You could be having a bad moment or a bad day. Tomorrow's a whole new day. Things could be better tomorrow. Problems aren't forever. They're temporary. And I remember that every day too. If I'm having a bad day, like I did yesterday, I had a very bad day yesterday. Um, but I reminded myself, what? It's temporary. And woke up today and I feel great. And I'm on this wonderful podcast today telling my story again. And so, everything is temporary.
Yes, I love that because so many people get stuck in this negativity ball and they can't seem to get out of it and feel like there is no way out of it. But you got to flip the script because if all you're telling yourself is negative, 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 what do you think is going to happen? Only negative things.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a lifelong journey. Healing is not done in 12 hours or 12 years, or it's lifelong, but it's
Yeah.
so worth it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Very rewarding.
Yeah,
Yes, I
you got your
agree.
life back.
Yeah. Yes.
Was there
So
any attacks after you, do you know? Or did he kind of stop after that? Do
it
they know?
seems as if it stopped. Everybody has theories. Did he move away and continue to, stalk and kill women elsewhere? Or did he go to jail? Or um, is he dead? You know, there's all kinds of theories. But as far as we know, my attack was the last one. As far as we know. Yeah.
Gotcha. He's like, shit, she lived.
Yeah. I did. I was kind of curious a few years ago about, serial killers and what they're like. And I wanted to know what their biggest fear was. And so I looked it up and read quite a few articles of people that had interviewed serial killers. One of their biggest fears is getting caught. So I was like, okay, I survived. So that's going to scare the hell out of him because I can identify him, obviously. Or I should hope I could. So I'm thinking, all right, so all these years, he's probably living in fear that one day, with the evidence they gathered off my car, he would be caught. So that's kind of a little justice for me, him living in a little bit of fear all these years that he may have a knock on his door that, oh, we know what you did. And so that's a little retribution for me, but
Yeah,
yeah,
he's the one looking over his shoulder all the time.
exactly. Yeah.
Did you get any DNA or anything like in your fingernails? Do they have anything to work off of if there's someone they think?
Yeah, they did scrape underneath my fingernails. And they've sent it out for forensics, and nothing really came back conclusive. But I was just recently told that every few years, forensics goes further and further and further with technology. So they're supposed to be sending that out again in hopes of, finding something with that. They did lift fingerprints. They believe that there's one set that has not been able to be identified. So they run that through CODIS every few years. Obviously, if he's never been arrested or doesn't have a record or got a job where he had to be fingerprinted through the database, the fingerprints aren't going to get a hit. But they try to run them every few years. I don't know. I haven't really had the best relationship with the authorities. New Hampshire is, how should I say this? They have a very large list of unsolved, missing, and cold cases. One of the worst in the country, unfortunately. And so I have actually been connected up with Maura Moore's sister, Julie and Fred. And another case that I did a episode on is Trish Haynes, her family and her advocates. Trish Haynes' case is frustrating because she went missing. Her body was found in a washer and dryer unit in the bottom of a pond, and the people that held her almost like captive for a few months, everybody knows they're the ones that killed her. Obviously, the washer and dryer came from their home. And there's so much evidence that they killed her. There's so many witnesses that she was treated so horribly when she was living with them, physically and mentally. And the authorities refuse to arrest this couple. They keep saying they don't have enough evidence. So her family is advocating for her case and for her justice quite a bit. And I happened to meet with them. They did a rally. They do a rally every year up at the Capitol in New Hampshire and Concord. So I got connected up with them. And now I connected myself with Trish Haynes' family and Maura Moore's family. And we're getting together with other people, and we're going to be doing a march up to the state capitol, to the AG office this summer in August. And, we want them to do their job. We want them to,
Take it
investigate.
seriously.
Yeah. The way they've treated these families has been horrible. I mean, my case is in the cold case unit, supposedly. I mean, it took me a couple of months to find it. My case has been up there for 35 years. And over the years, with all the new people coming into the cold case unit, new eyes looking at these cases, new people, investigating these cases, they never contact me. You would think they would have new questions. Oh, Jane's the only survivor of the Connecticut River Valley serial killer. we should re-interview her. Let's re-interview her. Let's, find out, maybe we got new questions that, we haven't asked her yet, or maybe she remembers something she didn't remember back then, or, I've had no contact with them at all. And, so we're all getting together, and, we're going to march up to that state capitol and to the AG office, and we're hoping that they'll have a sit down with us, allow us to share our concerns, and hopefully they can give us some, answers, give us, be like, okay, we're going to start investigating, or this is what our plans are to go forward, with this case and that case and that case. Because they're I don't even know how to describe it and be nice about it. They just they're
being
yeah, they're
negligent.
negligent. Their lack of communication with the families is horrible. These families just in the past few months are on their third victim advocate. I've never been given a victim advocate. It's just, we're just asking them to do their job, do their job. And I don't think that's much
Right.
to ask.
Right.
I think there's been a lot of missed opportunities with solving the Connecticut River Valley cases. Trish Haynes' case should be solved. Those people should be in jail. There is plenty of evidence to convict them, more than enough evidence to convict them. Unfortunately, they're in jail, but not connected to her case. Not connected to Trish at all. Maura Mora's case, she's been missing for how long? And the family has fought for so many answers. They've been in and out of court, just trying to get answers so that they can, if the AG office and the cold case unit don't want to investigate like they should, give their family the information they need so they can conduct their own investigation. What will it hurt? More is still missing. It's been 19 years. There's still no, no conviction, no person of interest or anything like that with Moore's case. What would it hurt to give the family the information they need to conduct their own investigation to possibly find answers or find Maura? That's all they want to do is, find their family member that's been missing for 19 years. So we, and also, my co-host Amanda and I come across another case, Bethany and her mom, Tina Sinclair. They're from Chesterfield, New Hampshire. They've both been missing for almost 18 years. They know who they know they're murdered. They know that they're not alive, and they know who did it. But their case still remains unsolved, and their bodies still haven't been found. And the unfortunate thing about that is because years have gone by, their advocates have since passed away. Tina's mom and her sister has since passed away, and they were their two biggest advocates. So me and my co-host Amanda are going to start advocating for Tina and her daughter and for their case. So we're going to start really getting into advocating for more victims that don't have a voice, and start holding New Hampshire authorities accountable for their lack of investigating and their lack of, sharing information, and start, working on these cases the way they should. There's so much technology today. There's so much forensics today. There's just so much, and there's no reason for these cases to be so unsolved. It's still after so many years. So yeah, I'm kind of on a mission to change that.
Well, I love it. Good for you. We need more of that because, I mean, come on, these are people's loved ones, their families. Like have compassion, have empathy. What if it was your daughter? What if it was your mother?
Exactly.
You would want answers. So, I mean, and you're right. Look at what genealogy nowadays. Oh my God. Like, we are blowing stuff out of the park. Like, we have come so far. I say now, like, if you commit a crime, you're an idiot because literally we don't even have to find you. We need to find like your third cousin from
But
somewhere
then
else.
we have a saying in New Hampshire, if you want to commit a crime and get away with it, come to New Hampshire. Come to New Hampshire. You want to commit murder, come to New Hampshire. You'll get away with it. No, I don't mean to. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. But yeah,
Yeah, no.
it's not good here in New Hampshire. It's um, you know, they don't want to work with other states, which is frustrating because some of the victims in New Hampshire, some of the victims of the Connecticut River Valley cases, some are New Hampshire, some are Vermont. And New Hampshire is not very willing to work with Vermont. Well, you're looking for the same serial killer. Why would you not want to work together? you
Mm,
know? So it's frustrating as
right.
hell. Frustrating as hell. Yeah.
Oh, very. Because they could have evidence that ties both together. What if they do have some magical DNA or something over there?
Well,
That's
back
just
in the
nonsense.
80s, when these bodies started showing up, they did form a task force between New Hampshire and Vermont. They formed a task force for a few years, and these were with the original detectives, but they just couldn't. The cases still remained unsolved. The leads went cold. So after that, and the cases started going into the cold case unit. New Hampshire has their own cold case unit, and Vermont has their own cold case unit. It was like once they went into the cold case units is when all of a sudden they weren't working together. New Hampshire wasn't working with Vermont. They weren't looking into, possibly new leads that were connecting, the cases together. And, that kind of frustrating, it was like, I've had so many people, contact me and say, I know who did this. I've been investigating the Connecticut River Valley killer for 10 years, 15 years. I know who did this. I figured it out. And, or other people contact me and say, I have information I would love to give you. And I'd be like, you got to bring this information to Concord State Police or the detective unit or the cold case unit. And I'd give them all the information to bring the info to. Next thing I know, these people are at my front door giving me this information. And I'm like, I can't do anything more with that information than you can. The only thing I can tell you is to bring it up to the authorities up in Concord. And they're all like, well, we have, but we're not hearing back from them. We're trying to contact them by phone and they're not returning my calls, or, I have more info and I'm not, they're not reaching out to me or whatever. So they're literally coming to my house. And I just got really, frustrated with them with that. Not with the people that came to my house, but with the authorities in Concord. And I'll call them up and be like, you know, you guys get this information? Because I got these people knocking on my door. I had one lady drive 6 hours from New York just to tell me she knew who my attacker was. And I was like, I'm sorry. I mean, I understand you have this information, but there's nothing I can do with it. You know, I'm not a detective. I'm not the authorities. You really got to bring it to Concord. And she was like, oh, I sent all this stuff up to Concord like 9 months ago, and I still haven't heard from them. So it was like, I had to contact Concord and say, okay,
Wow.
you may not want to give them information, these people that come knocking on my door, but can you just at least let them know that you received the information so they'll start coming and knocking on my door,
Right.
And so, yeah, it's been quite the journey.
I can only imagine. I mean, I would still start like a notebook of everything that they tell you, and just so you have a little piece of it in case somebody decides to do something with
It's crazy.
it. But I mean, good for you. I'm happy that you're
Oh,
still
I
in the
am.
fight. I think you're doing amazing things. It's
Especially
great.
now that I've done so much healing. I have the strength to start speaking up and saying, okay, this is not okay. And the public needs to know that, this is going on. And I'm sure with our march that we have in August, more people are going to come forward and say, oh my God, my family member was a victim too, and they're treating me the same way. And, hopefully more people will come forward with this information so that, others know that, okay, wow, this is happening in New Hampshire and this is not okay. And, you know, they need to change
Right.
some things, they need to change some things.
Absolutely. I think we
Yeah.
need that worldwide, but absolutely start in your hometown and hope it can go everywhere else as well, because everybody is in need of some little extra help. That's for
Exactly.
sure.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that you want people to
Um,
know, or where's your
my
podcast on
podcast is
all
all on all
platforms?
platforms. Invisible Tears. We have Facebook, Invisible Tears Podcast. Um, uh, we have a link tree. If you hit on the link tree, you'll see where Insta. uh, See, I don't do all the social media stuff. Amanda and Drew do. They're my editor and my producers, and so they do. They take care of all my social media stuff. But I know we have Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and we have Facebook. And so if you hit our link tree, it'll connect you to wherever we are, all our platforms. You can find Invisible Tears wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And we're sponsored and work closely with Glassbox. And we also just launched, well, I didn't launch it, but I worked very closely with Jenna Mel and Crawlspace Media with a new project, Dark Valley. That's a podcast that they just launched last week. You can find them wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Dark Valley covers a lot of the Connecticut River Valley cases. Jen does an amazing job with her investigative journalism with the podcast. She's interviewed several family members, and her podcast is amazing. I just heard it for the first time last week. Amazing, amazing podcast. So don't forget to check that out. And yeah, between Invisible Tears and Dark Valley, you'll hear my story and others. And We go on quite a bit and let people know, what our events are, where we're going to be, what we're doing for upcoming events. So, yeah.
Very good. Awesome. And I'll
I
make
hope
sure I'm going to
so.
check those out too.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for
Yes.
letting me share my story. And
Yeah.
it was great meeting you.
Thank you. It was great meeting you too.
Oh,
And keep
absolutely.
fighting the fight.
Absolutely. Yep.
You will find all links for her and myself at the bottom of the show notes. Thank you so much to all my listeners and people who have liked, followed, and subscribed. I really appreciate it, and you do make a difference. For the month of July, the Deluxe Network podcast of the month is In a Pickle, where they talk about pickleball. And then there's also Growing Up Bananas. This podcast is about Asian immigrants, but they really say any kind of immigrant, and how you have the internal battle with staying true to your culture or adapting. All those can be found on your favorite podcast platforms, so go check them out. All right, you guys, we'll talk crime another time. Bye.